In this segment, I'd like to give you an example of another capability of the structural adjustment rules. Specifically, we'll be looking at how structural adjustment rules can move constituents from one location to another. For this particular example, I'm going to show you how to combine two simple clauses, two simple propositions, into a single proposition. And you'll definitely want to do this. The semantic representations consist of very short, simple sentences. And if you don't combine propositions under the right circumstances, if you don't combine them, if you leave them as very short, simple sentences, the text will sound more childish. It'll sound immature. So to improve the quality of the generated texts, you'll definitely want to write rules that combine propositions under very particular circumstances. And we're here at Discourse 1:7, which produces, "Then David went to King Saul and said to him." Now the semantic representation actually has, "Then David went to King Saul, period." Then, immediate temporal succession, "Then David said to King Saul, I will fight Goliath." So there's a proposition here, then there's another proposition here that contains an embedded patient proposition. We want to write a rule that will say when two propositions have the same subject nominal and they're combined with this immediate temporal succession then we're going to combine those two propositions into a single proposition. So let's add a new group to our structural adjustment rules. We'll call it combining propositions. Now here we could select clauses. We want the subject nominals to be the same. So we're going to select nouns, but clauses would work as well. I'm going to click on the main clause button, and that will add a second main proposition. Now let's specify that these two propositions must have the same subject nominal. And we'll do that. Let me build these structures here. We'll set the features. This must be the subject of this proposition, and this noun phrase must be the subject of its proposition. And to specify that these two nominals are the same, we'll click the button Set Nominal Indices, and then we'll select the value I. So now these two nominals must have the same value for noun list index. You see the third feature in that pop-up, noun list index? We want these two nominals to be the same referent. Let's also specify that these two propositions must be joined with the relation, or no, the conjunction, then. We want immediate temporal succession. Okay, when we see this situation in the semantic representations, we're going to move the second proposition into the first. And you'll see the red arrow appearing. And let's give this second proposition a type value of coordinate independent. And let's change the translation of this conjunction from then to and. And we'll also set the surface realization feature of this second nominal to big pro. We discussed that in an earlier segment. Discourse 1:7. Then David went to King Saul. Then David said to King Saul. We're going to change that to, then David went to King Saul and said. Let's call this rule combine simple. Combine simple propositions that have the same subject nominal and are joined with then. Now we haven't specified yet that these are simple. I'm going to come back in a minute and we'll specify, I'll explain what I mean by that. Let's save this rule now. For topics, let's call it clause combining, combining clauses. Now if we execute this rule now, okay, there are many concepts that are unlinked, but let's ignore that for now. David went to King Saul, period. Now this clause, the type is coordinate independent, so the rule that we just wrote has applied, and it set the type value to coordinate independent, and this proposition is now embedded in this larger proposition. You see that this is a subordinate clause. You see that the subordinate boundaries are slightly smaller than the main proposition boundaries. But we need to tell our phrase structure rule for clauses where to position these coordinate clauses. We look over here and we can see that the surface realization has been set to big pro. Our conjunction then has been put at the end. So we also need to tell our phrase structure rule for clauses to put this conjunction at the beginning. So let's modify our phrase structure rule for clauses. Let's insert a conjunction first. We'll leave that at the very beginning. Let's also insert another constituent. It will be a clause, and that clause must be a coordinate independent clause. And we want this to go towards the bottom. So now let's generate our verse again. And now we see, then David went to King Saul and said, etc. So our rule has worked. It's combined those two propositions. If the first proposition includes an adverbial clause or an object complement or something like that, then we don't want to combine these two propositions. I said up here in the name, combine simple propositions. By simple I mean it doesn't include an embedded proposition. And the way we do that, I'm going to put an embedded proposition there. For its type, we're going to say patient or adverbial clause, which is event modifier. And we want this rule to apply when this isn't there, when this embedded proposition isn't there. So we're going to click on not present and then click on that constituent. And you'll see that this constituent now has this dark gray cross-hatching. That means that this constituent must not be found in the semantic representation. If this constituent is found, then this rule won't apply. So here's how we define a simple proposition. It can't contain an embedded object complement or adverbial clause. This proposition doesn't include an embedded adverbial clause or object complement, so nothing will change here. I just wanted to show you how to specify that a constituent must not be present. And that concludes this segment.